Recording will start soon.
Yeah, I get deeply frustrated by web-based things that decide to just like move controls around
Yeah,
because, somebody discovered that, oh, well, it's more efficient this way. It's like,
yeah,
right, but we've all used 10 versions of it. Where was that way?
right. All right, let's do it. 5, 4, 3, 2. Hello, it's September 11th, 2024. I'm Scott,
And I'm Mark.
and this is Church's Lane. This is the weekly podcast where we talk about crazy things that Christians do that make the whole church look crazy.
And in this case, it's, I guess, the presidential debate happened last night between Trump and Harris.
Yep.
And while Trump does claim at some level to be a Christian, I'm more kind of concerned about the craziness that would come from the Christians that watch the debate, not anybody that was in the debate per se.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I guess we should preface this by saying election times tends to make everybody a little crazy,
Yeah,
right?
and like there are a lot of issues to us. I mean, like depending on your church tradition, where you grew up, all that kind of thing, right? We can each kind of have different values. So when we're thinking about like who to vote for, if we vote for anybody, it's like we have a lot of decisions to make.
Yeah.
And I think just the first thing that I wanted to bring up is just how frustrated I am as somebody watching a debate when I have like the two candidates are being really evasive. Like
Right.
they're being asked very direct questions and then they refuse to answer the question, sometimes even indirectly. I
Yeah.
mean, like, and if you watch the debate, you know what I'm talking about. You saw it on both sides of the stage. And being a Christian, like I want to know what the issues are, like who's going to fight for what,
Yeah.
and so when you don't give me a clear answer to these questions, I get kind of angry about it. I mean, I don't know about you.
Yeah. I f- you can tell me you can tell me more specifically, but I feel like the Bible gives us like a handful of examples about like things like let your yeses be yeses and noes be
Mhm.
noes, which is more kind of like honor your obligations, right? Do what you're going to say what you're going to do. But there's
Yeah.
also things in the Bible about speaking plainly and being wary about people whose language is flowery and too ornamental and not practical enough. And so yeah, when we like politics in America is like the NFL of wordplay, right? And
Mhm.
obfuscation and hiding your intent and saying you're zigging when you're really zagging. And
Right.
so like if you are not an active listener, it is really easy just to go, they're just saying a bunch of nothing. But they're not. They're actually saying what sounds like the thing you want to hear, but is actually the opposite.
Yeah, right. Like a lot of the language that was used, pardon me. A lot of the language that was used was very emotionally charged language.
Sure.
Um I am in the camp that tends to just intellectualize things,
Sure.
and kind of remove emotion out of it. It's,
Yeah.
like I come close enough to the spectrum to touch it, but not to actually be in it.
Yeah.
So like that's a me thing. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying it, but if you are like me, and there's plenty of
Yeah.
people that are, I mean, I could imagine just like all the emotional language. It's like, what do you like? You're not giving me information that I can verify or double check.
Yeah.
So like what are you supposed to do? And unfortunately, as we all are aware, it takes, 5 seconds to state a lie and then a 3-hour YouTube video to debunk that.
Right.
So, it's like I can understand why a lot of Christians could be on the fence about who they're going to vote for. Um, but I can't see from that debate like how they would have made up any kind of their mind, because I don't think that anything was really clarified. And I don't like, I feel bad for anybody who's stuck in that position.
Yeah. It there so let me put this under the heading of not all complex issues have easy answers,
Right.
right? So one of the things that makes this a uniquely American problem in the American church
Mhm.
is that the American church has by and large become commodified in the same way fast food is commodified.
Yeah.
You don't like what the pastor says at one church, you just leave and go to the church on the next corner. And if you don't like that pastor, you just go to the church on the next block, right?
Mhm.
There's a church somewhere where you can have it your way, right? And now the American voter has turned into that. Like I don't want just any candidate, and I don't want just the best candidate of the moment of the era. I want the candidate who will tell me anything I want to hear. And if that's a lie, so be it. And if that's something else, so be it.
Yeah.
And it's so like part of me bristles against that like whole how can you tell what the truth is? Because by and large, I don't think the American church, in regards to politics, wants to hear the truth. All they want to hear is that war is good and abortion is bad, you know?
Yeah. Like that really does feel like the way things have become in a lot of churches.
Yeah.
And that's just very sad. Um, but I mean, on that line though, I mean, there are going to be people in like churches that are exactly like what you just said.
Yeah.
And those individuals are going to be like, well, I don't like war, and I think abortion is a matter of healthcare.
Right.
And they're going to be facing a lot of pressure, even if not directly, just the environment they're in can exert a lot of psychic pressure on them to vote a particular way.
Yeah.
And so if you're in that environment, like you have to vote your conscience is your understanding. If you need help, I mean, you can go to a pastor, you can go to a trusted friend who knows scripture very well and is a very godly person to kind of help you wrestle with these issues. But I mean, ultimately, if you vote for somebody you detest, um, I mean, like and in the letter of James says, like, anyone who knows, uh, the good they should do and does not do it, it is sin for them.
Hmm.
So if you think that the good choice is X, but the
Yeah.
people have kind of inadvertently or advertently pressure you to vote Y, you're gonna be feeling guilty, and that sucks. And I don't want to see that for anybody. I mean, I do care how you vote, but I don't care how you vote. I want you to be psychologically healthy and not being a kind of a mentally abused by your environment.
Right. Yeah. Like I was very taken today by the headlines. Um that like very that pretty much boiled down the debate to um abortion is evil, and if you vote for Harris, you are demonic, you know?
A vote for Harris, a vote for Satan.
Yeah,
That was a fun headline.
yeah, yeah. And I to your point that you said earlier, I feel bad for all the people who don't who are like, well, no, I want health care for women. I support limited right to abortion. And then they look at their church and they go, clearly I don't understand something. Clearly I'm missing something. Clearly my theological brain is deficient, or I don't understand the nature of God. And it's not that at all. It's just that in the last 20 or 30 years, American churches have decided to weigh in heavily on a subject that's not clear at all.
Yeah, yeah, it got real weird, like right around what was it, like the 50s or 40s? I forget. When like the whole anti-abortion movement began in earnest, but it has spread and it's become very, very common.
Yeah.
But then it's like you get these people answering questions like, Vice President Harris, what's your opinion on you know unrestricted access to abortion or whatever, however it was phrased.
Yeah.
And then you see a lot of this just almost double speaky kind of thing going on where it's like she wants to make your typical Democratic voter happy, but then tries to massage it so it's more palatable to, maybe a left-leaning Republican who maybe like they can be grabbed to be brought over.
Yeah.
And then that's the same thing on the other side of the stage.
Right.
And it's like, be honest is what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Because abortion particularly is a very difficult topic for the church.
Yeah.
And I
Is
mean,
is it a political candidate's job to dumb down their message for the average churchgoer?
well,
like what? Why is it President Trump's or Vice President Harris's job to eliminate the nuance from the topic?
yeah.
Like Harris is a Democrat. Of course, she's going to say things that appeal to Democrats, right? She's a
Mhm.
Democrat. You would be stupid to say anything that alienates her own base, right?
Right.
So you of course you're going to say the thing that appeals to your base. And the whole point of getting up on TV for way too long in the course of my evening is to convince some people who are on the fence to come to your side of the fence, right? That's the whole point of Harris's spiel, right? So we
Yeah.
understand, we at least understand the point of that spiel. What we don't understand is Donald Trump's kind of, well, I got you a Supreme Court and we overturned Roe v. Wade, but I don't necessarily support an abortion ban, but I do support an abortion ban. But my VP says I support an abortion ban, but I don't. Won't like make up your mind. Like
Mhm.
your base is going to stick with you no matter what you say. You could say I'm going to hand out abortions like candy, and MAGA would still stay with you. So what is it you're trying to say that MAGA is going to get, but that's going to convince people who are on the fence about this to come to your side? And it wasn't at all clear what he was saying. So is isn't it his job to create clarity, even if creating clarity involves introducing nuance?
Yeah. Nuance is a lost art
Yeah, for
in
sure.
politics, for sure. Um, as you were talking, like I was just thinking too, like with all the back and forth, like there was quite a number of ad hominem arguments against
Yeah.
one another. And ad hominem, if you're not familiar,
Thank you very
is
much.
against. It means literally against the man,
Right.
but it just means like you're attacking the person, like their credibility, their ugly, whatever way you're just attacking them for it.
Yeah.
Um, and like that's not a Christian way to engage in debate. Like I should hope that Christians of different political leanings talking to each other don't ever engage in that. And like we shouldn't also be, demeaning, somebody else's candidate that they favor over our candidate because we don't like them. That's just not a Christian attitude. Should be exemplifying Christian love. And I guess that's a big thing. If you cannot point to the candidate you're looking to vote for and see that they are doing at least a better job of showing what Christian love should look like than the other,
Yeah.
then, I mean, either vote for the one or, I mean, if you want to check out and say, nope, I'm voting for
Right.
Jesus, never mind, I'm out of here. I get it. And I don't blame you one bit.
Do you remember a specific ad hominem attack that particularly rubbed you the wrong way last night?
uh, so, uh, oh my gosh, it was like this really, it was a stealth ad hominem.
Uh-huh.
Um, when Harris said this former president, like you
Right.
could just hear in that pause, mother effing,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it was there. I mean, there was, I mean, it looked to me like there was genuine passion there, but like even when she uttered former president, like she hit the word former kind of hard, like, and it's
Yeah.
like it had that ring of like I'm trying to push you down, like,
Yeah.
and it was like, oh, that's it's kind of crappy.
Yeah.
What about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, no, for sure. Look, so my point in asking that question is to
Mhm.
make sure that we're clear about the distinction between an ad hominem attack and a legitimate criticism of a person.
Yes.
For instance, the idea that look, Mr. Former President, you are a person who still doesn't believe that you lost the election, right? That's still a
Mhm.
personal attack. That's an attack against Donald Trump. But that speaks to the way he thinks, the way he reasons, the way he leads. And that's something very much a voter should be interested in, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Right. So, yeah, we just have to be discerning, right? That not every critique is an ad hominem attack, and not everything that sounds like a legitimate critique is a legitimate critique, right? Because it,
Right.
like you said, in the ability of people to obfuscate their words and make very ugly things sound uh, acceptable, is in a politician's wheelhouse all the time. The amount of euphemisms for black person, you know,
Mhm.
is unbelievable. Immigrant, right? At this point, the
Yeah.
word immigrant is basically synonymous with racial minority, right?
Yeah.
And if your base is primarily a bunch of white men, then the word immigrant is the same as saying the N word, right?
Yeah. I mean, it really is.
Right.
Um, and just like a dog, like the dog with a bone is kind of how I felt about like Trump's response to just immigration in general.
Yeah.
Um, like where he made these accusations that of the millions of immigrants that come to this country every year, um, like he made no differentiation whether they were trying to enter legally or illegally or whether they were seeking asylum. But then he just kind of said broadly, like, there are millions of criminals and people from insane asylums coming here. It's like, I call BS. Cite
Right.
your source.
Right. Immigrants in Springfield eating dogs and cats.
Oh my gosh.
Did you literally beat your head against like your hand when that happened?
Oh yeah, my wife was just like, what?
My
When
jaw
that came,
dropped. My jaw dropped when that came out.
yeah, it's like I if Biden or not Biden, if Harris would have said, "What the actual f are you talking about?"
Right.
I would have been like, "That's good television," because
Yeah.
that was what was going through my mind.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I think that goes to the thing that if a person and the host, what's his name? He's like basically just on air fact checked them and said, yes, our station
Yeah.
has reached out to the city manager, and yeah, that's not a thing.
Right.
Um, and like Trump argued with it, and it's like, well, how you receive correction demonstrates, I think, humility.
Right.
If you receive it um, generously and be like, oh, okay, I guess I had that wrong. That's a quality that I think you can sell yourself on, if you're a candidate. But when you say, oh, well, well, I saw it on television um, because TV is notoriously filled with, you know, dog eating. Um, but then like another case, there was something about, criminal statistics where they were saying, the hosts were saying like, well, the FBI has shown a decrease
Yeah.
in crime in this country
Yeah.
over the last 3.5 years. So it's just like there's this complete unwillingness to even say, well, you know what? I will research that and I'll get back to you on it. I mean, it's just like, no, like there's no humility there. And I'm not saying, I mean, Biden or not Biden, Harris. I keep saying Biden. My
Yeah. That
gosh.
there's something in there in that. Yeah.
But Harris was called out about some stuff and she reacted just as ungenerously.
Mm,
Um,
interesting. Like called out about what? Like I'm trying to think about what she was corrected on.
my brain just turned off.
Yeah, I'm
It
not sure
wasn't
what
it
that
wasn't a
was.
correction. It was something she was asked to account for and just didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And that surprised
whatever.
me. That surprised me that there were opportunities for her to say, um, and this is a glass half empty, half full situation.
Mhm.
There are opportunities to say, Biden Harris did not get this right, but Harris Walsh will get this right. Right? There's something that
Yeah.
didn't happen in the last 4 years, but I can't handle. Like, I'm not the president, so I don't get to make those policy decisions. My job is to carry out the policy decisions of the president, and that's not Kamala Harris. That's Joe Biden. But under Kamala Harris, I've got a different plan that I will execute. And she missed a bunch of opportunities to do that. And I was wondering if that was nerves, like, and
Mhm.
the press today is reporting that it was a slam dunk, and I don't agree. I don't agree that Harris had a slam dunk last night. I think she did fine. I think certainly um, Trump came off the rails, right? And so in
A little
comparison,
bit.
she had a great night. No, not a little bit. When you start talking about eating cats and dogs, you are way off the reservation, right? So
Yeah.
in comparison, she had a great night. But I've seen this movie in 2016 where
Mhm.
the career politician smacks him around on the debate stage and then proceeds on to lose quite handily, right? I've got no interest in the sequel, right? So the idea that we're going to take a victory lap to me is pretty disgusting. Seeing where we were not too long ago, um, so I think there's a lot to be said for um, both teams getting a shocking dose of reality.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and for Christians to kind of look at this and understand that two things can be true at one time. One thing is this is incredibly important. Who you choose as a leader is incredibly important. And at the same time, this is all theater. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
so yes, the right to life is an incredibly important topic. They didn't talk about it last night too much. National security is an important topic. The president of the United States is the highest ranking diplomat that represents the U.S. to the entire world. Who do you trust? That's an important topic that they didn't talk about much. And not that I think that the church um, has a prescription, has a biblical prescription for all
Mhm.
this stuff. But certainly, when you think of the president of the United States as the most qualified executive that we can raise up in our country, and you look at either of these two, the church needs to be kind of wondering, really? Is this what we have? This is what we can do? Like, we are the
Mhm.
single largest voting bloc in the United States, and these are the best two bizarro nut jobs we can come up with?
Yeah. I mean, neither one of these people is a Christian paragon of virtue,
Exactly.
even kind of a little.
Yeah.
And that should give us pause
Yeah.
as people who claim the cross of Jesus Christ, um, because we, I mean, we're like, God's not going to make us account for who we voted for. He's going
Mhm.
to account us for what was in our heart. Um, but
I don't know. Like, if you believe that God cares about your home run or your touchdown, then certainly He cares about who you voted for.
it's it's
You know,
a weird God.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
that's the God of the Bible that we've convinced ourselves is real, then certainly who you vote for must account for something.
yeah. And I have not convinced myself that God is real.
Thank you so much.
I do not worship the football god.
Right.
Um, occasionally, the well cooked steak god.
Right. Yes, the gourmet meal God for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of like I've seen articles in the past where we had Christians writing articles talking about why Trump is God's candidate,
Yeah.
and I'm sure there are plenty of people saying the same thing now. I shouldn't say pretty sure. I know I've seen the headlines.
You see the pictures all the time of an
Mhm.
angelic Jesus figure in Trump. You
Yeah,
see the artwork online all the time.
and I mean, there's a very important thing to say here, just from a theological standpoint. Making those proclamations, you are making a prophecy. And
Yeah.
scripture, very clear. You can go read it in Deuteronomy. What are the qualifications for a prophet? The qualifications are you cannot ever say anything that is incorrect
Yeah.
and in the name of God, nor can you ever get a single prediction incorrect.
Right.
If a single thing is wrong, you are a false prophet according to scripture. And so I think, like, us as Christians, we need to really control the impulse to say, well, Biden is, out because Harris is God's choice, or
Yeah.
Trump is going to come back because he's God's choice.
Yeah.
Um, we shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Because unless God has opened up, a FaceTime call with you, you don't know nothing.
Yeah. The thing that strikes me more than anything else at election time, any election time, not just
Mhm.
this current election time, is how clear it becomes um, how little regard Christians have for the Bible. And I'm not talking about
Mhm.
like the hard parts of the Bible. I'm just talking about things like the Ten Commandments. Let's just go through them really quick. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. And I just
Absolutely.
I refer you to godlike images of Donald Trump that portrays him essentially as Jesus, right?
Mhm.
Right. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images.
Ah, you're using
Right.
the King James here, huh?
Yeah. Well, that's the page that Google brought up for me. Right. So yeah, you don't worship things more than you worship God, right? And you don't value things, right? And clearly, in today's political age, we would save a murderer before we saved somebody of the opposite political persuasion. You know,
Well, remember, when Pontius Pilate had Jesus in front of the people, he's like, which one of these two yahoos do you want me to set free? The weird hippie over here, or the serial killer? And they went, hey, send us Barabbas. We
yeah.
like him.
Yep. Thou shalt not make any name of the Lord in vain. I don't know that either of these any candidates take the Lord's name in vain. Um, Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Every president in my lifetime has been a regular churchgoer for no other reason than because it's politically unacceptable not to be. Right?
Hmm.
All of a sudden though, Joe Biden is evil and he's not Christian, even though he is a a faithful church attender, and Donald Trump, who never goes to church and couldn't recite a verse of the Bible to save his life, is God's chosen one. What? Um, Honor thy father and thy mother. Um, yeah, I don't know. That one's a little bit weird. But I will say that nothing breaks up families the way political conversation breaks up family.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know?
And I think, like to honor your own father and mother is to remember where you came from.
Yeah.
And to like ultimately to honor God, who is your ultimate father.
Right.
And so I think like a lot of the policies we've seen, especially with the way people at the border have been treated, really, I mean, with like breaking up families, like have really failed to honor any mother and father. Because like I think about, when Jesus said, you go, who are my mother and my brothers? Well, these are my mothers and my brothers.
Thank you. Yep. Let's see. I don't think we really need thou shalt not commit murder. Probably don't need to worry about that one. Thou shalt not
Relate.
commit adultery. Uh,
Well,
yeah. So self-explanatory on that one.
I'm just gonna say, in order to commit adultery, maybe the rule is you have to actually be an adult.
Interesting. Well, that
Yeah,
takes
maybe
you
that,
also. Thou shalt not steal. That one once again. Current events. I would call fraud a form of stealing. So make of that what you want.
well, you know what? The
Yeah.
government considered it stealing.
Yeah. And I think that we have a presidential candidate who's been convicted of same. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, and that's when like we come back to the debates, and um, false witness is just the name of the game, right? Obfuscating the truth,
Mhm.
bending facts to meet to your will, taking things out of context. You know that is politics, is bearing false witness at anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and then thou shalt not covet, which of course once again is politics in a nutshell, right? Wanting money, power, position, desiring that more than anything else. You know,
Yeah, I
it,
consider it a safe move just to mistrust anybody who wants high office.
right. But like I said, it's also an indictment of the church because the church covets these things, right? The church covets political power. The church
Mhm.
covets the ability to tell non-Christians the way they should think and they should feel. You know, and instead of winning people to Christ, they just want to um, force them to submit to Christ. You know, and that's God's job. That's what Jesus does when he comes back riding on his horse with a can full of whoop ass. You know,
Yeah, like there's that whole Seven Mountains dominionism thing.
yeah,
And anybody listening to this or watching this, look it up if you don't know what it is. It's a real party. I am fully comfortable in calling it a heresy.
right,
Like not merely just like a whoopsie, but like full on heresy. And it makes those claims. So there's a lot of Christians who have bought into this, and they think that the solution to God's commandment to make disciples and to love our neighbor is to force Jesus down their throat with
right,
a cannon ramrod.
yeah,
And by like in culture is kind of their obsession, right? Like they want to change the culture, but they want to seize power.
yeah.
And if there's anything that we can point to, Christians and power are not a great mix.
They're always a terrible mix, right? Every time, all the
Yeah.
time.
I
Yeah,
mean, we've said it before. This is a club that you have to admit you suck to get in.
yeah,
So, it's not great. And um also having power, having, like all that reach, the ability to have whatever you want,
yeah,
it causes you to rely less on God.
yeah,
And I mean, yeah, there's just read Isaiah,
yeah,
the book of Isaiah. It's like there's a number of things in there that just lambast, you became, fat and you stopped trusting in God. And like that's the criticism.
yeah,
And so I get really twitchy around any kind of Christian nationalism for that reason.
yeah,
Um, and I'm afraid that the desire to achieve that goal will thoroughly override just, Jesus in the
right.
whole thing.
Yeah. All right, so let's land this plane. We've been at this for over 30 minutes. Let's land this plane. I
Dig it.
feel like, well, I'm gonna put you on the spot, but I'm gonna give you the option to to pass. Um, I don't
Yeah.
think it's fair for us for 30 minutes to take a torch to Christians and tell them they're full of crap when it comes to applying the Bible to politics, and then not in the same episode tell people how I'm gonna apply spiritual ethics to politics, you know?
Mhm.
So if you want to talk about how you're going to vote, that's fine, but I'm going to share or not, that's fine. But I think at the end of the day, I think Jesus was um a, a man who walked this earth in a physical form, and therefore he dealt with situations that he encountered, right? And so as we think about elections, I can't, like, I've got a family to take care of. I've got a mortgage to pay. I'm not going to Washington, D.C.
Right.
to try to convince either candidate or Mar-a-Lago. I'm not going either place to try to convince a candidate to change their position, right? There is literally there is not enough money in my bank account to write a check to either of these candidates to make it worth it for them to change their opinions in the wake
Mhm.
of the NRA writing $50 million checks every year, right? Like, I literally don't have any sway with the political candidate. So the only sway I have in the political process is my vote, right?
Yeah.
And so Jesus didn't go around um, just doing things for the pomp and circumstance of it,
For,
right?
for the lulls, as they say.
Right. Yeah. Feeding people fills their bellies. It keeps them
Mhm.
alive for another day. Clothing people, it keeps them warm. It keeps them alive. Speaking truth to power has a function. And so my vote has a function. And so my vote can do one of two things. It can promote evil into positions of power, or
Mhm.
it can keep evil from positions of power,
Yeah.
right? And so I will vote for a grasshopper before I vote for President Trump. It's just not going to happen because no matter what other name you put on the other side as an opponent, he is the most evil version of that competitive space, right?
Yeah.
So in the vein of you need to love God and you need to love others. Well, loving others means inflicting the least amount of evil as humanly possible on them. And so my vote's going to be for Kamala Harris.
Yeah. My gosh. Like, you should never have to say that, like, loving God is inflicting the least damage.
But that's where we are in politics. In
Yes.
politics, like if you're a MAGA conservative, you see the elevation of any liberal progressive policy as evil. You just do,
Yeah.
right? And if you are, a dyed-in-the-wool progressive, you see the regressive policies of the GOP as evil. That's just the world we live in, and I'm
Yeah.
not willing to fight with reality on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, how to say this without it becoming too long? In as you read through the Old Testament, after Torah, so Joshua, Judges, etc. You see a thing happen, and what you see is Israel calling out to God for a king to rule over them, and
Hmm.
God saying, Not enough, son?" And they're like, "Nope." And he's like, "Okay, here's your king." They
Yep.
suck, by
Yep.
the way.
Yeah.
And you see king after king after king of Israel, never mind Babylon and Assyria and whoever else, just sucking.
Yeah.
There's a couple of good examples, many more bad examples.
Sure.
The point being is that God should be our king.
Hmm.
Now, we don't vote for a king, but let's face it, you're voting for, the highest office in the nation. We can just fit it into, the biblical category what a king would be, because it'd be a
Sure.
ruler of any kind.
No argument. Yeah.
And so for me, I think it kind of really falls into, you know, all governments, all human government is really just it's just an earthly institution. It is not God's institution. They have a responsibility that God would say, well, now that you're there, you have this responsibility.
You're it. Sure.
Yeah, but ultimately, it comes down to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's.
Hmm.
You know, Jesus even says, like, just pay the tax to Caesar. It's his money. He can keep it. You don't need Caesar's money.
Uh-huh.
And so for that reason, it's just kind of like, well, I'll vote. I'll give back to Caesar what Caesar's.
Hmm.
And for me, um, whoever is going to um, just be the least, I guess, jackassy.
Yeah.
um,
Sure.
like when it comes to um, somebody who's going to draw the church into power, into being in charge of the world
Hmm.
when it's God that's in charge. And too often, I mean, we're weak and we're limited, and too often we kind of think that, well, if I'm a Christian and I'm doing it, and God hasn't, impaled me with a spike, then it must be okay with God.
Yeah. Right.
And so it's like I cannot, in any good conscience, vote for any candidate who is trying to make the church have greater power in the world, as opposed to, spiritual
Yeah.
values. So I'm voting for Trump, or see, I'm voting for
Uh,
Trump only in my worst nightmares,
right. Yep.
you
Yeah.
know,
It's so
and
sad
I'm
that that's
voting
where
for
we've gotten
Biden,
to.
or I'm voting for Harris, not Biden. Why do I keep saying freaking
Yeah.
Biden? My gosh.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. But and it's not because I think that she's a paragon of virtue.
Right.
That's
Yep.
because I think she is going to be, like you said, the least damaging
Right.
to A, the church,
Yeah.
and B, my neighbor who I'm supposed to be able to love, and I can't love if the world's on fire.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. We're church is lame, and every week we get together and talk about the crazy stuff that Christians do. In this case, I think like I would summarize like, well, what's so crazy? And the crazy part is what you said, is that we get so caught up in the rat race that's called politics that we forget that we worship God, and God is preeminent above all. And so I hope that people hear this message. I mean, they're going to get mad. People are just going to get mad, and that's okay. I hope they hear our hearts as well as our words. Um, that if you are standing on a political hill and that's the hill you're going to die on, then you're not dying on spiritual hills. The
Mhm,
political hill is abortion, right? That's one of the political hills, right? The spiritual hill to die on is, young woman, I love you. Jesus loves you,
mhm,
and you're pregnant and you don't know what to do. And because I love you, I'm going to walk with this through you, no matter what, whatever decision you make. I'm going to walk with you through this. You are not alone. I love you. The church loves you. Jesus loves you. And it doesn't matter if we condone your decision or not. We are here for you because of the love of Jesus, right? And that's the hill that you die on if you are a spiritual being and not a political being. So hopefully people are hearing us, that in election time, like, it really is a spiritual discipline to push aside the politics and remember, love God, love one another. And if that
mhm.
breaks, then all the politics in the world doesn't fix it.
No, not at all.
Right.
And for anybody who is in that environment and people are trying to pressure you to vote something other than your conscience,
Right.
just remember what Jesus said to the apostles at the Last Supper when he lifted up the bread and said, "Eat me."
What
I
is the
there's not enough good Eucharist jokes in the world.
No, my favorite, like every time somebody asks me about um like what is your favorite verse or something like that. Anything along that. Like anytime anybody asks like, well, what's your favorite verse? I always go to Jesus saying, "Why are you still so dumb?" you know, that's like the best. Like even Jesus knows like when people are just being dumb and isn't afraid to say so. And I think if Jesus can say it, then like I can say it, you know?
There's I gotta remember, like, I can never remember the actual verse number, and I should actually commit it to memory. But there's a verse in the first chapter of Joel, and if Joel is it's a very short letter in the Old Testament. It's one of the prophets,
Yeah.
um, where he says, "Awake, you drunkards, and weep,
Yeah.
for 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 you will taste the new wine." It's
Yeah.
just like, oh, and I love it because I feel like I'm one of the drunkards,
Right.
you
Yep.
know.
And then that's like the best way to see it. Like, oh yeah, I can see Jesus saying this to me. Like I
Mhm,
can see Jesus
mhm.
saying to me, "Scott, you're such an idiot. Why can't you just see the obvious?" Like
Yeah.
these parables are not that difficult. Like I am not speaking in code, you know? And so, yeah, I totally see Jesus talking to me about that. All right. Anyway, if you've got something to say, there's all the things, right? There's commenting, there's thumbs up and thumbs down, and there are leaving reviews and stars and ratings and reviews, all that stuff. Clickety 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 click. And if you want to like really give us like the long form, like give us the soup to nuts of why we're wrong, shoot us an email at churcheslamepodcast@gmail.com.
And if you're done with all that, you want to get out of here, then go in peace and serve the Lord. Amen.
Nice. All
All
right.
right.
Hey, what are